So we got cut off before, and we were just starting to talk about bass clef. And again, the bass clef does look like this frowny face with two dots. And we have to remember that those two dots, they can't just go anywhere that we want them to go. They have to specifically go around this fourth line right here. That's very specific. So let's draw out our line notes, starting with the first line note, second, third, fourth, and then fifth, following the order of the first is at the bottom all the way up to the fifth being at the top. I'm going to show a little bit of this treble clef for reference because the notes on the bass clef are not the same notes as the treble clef. Unfortunately, it's not that easy, but they do relate to the notes of the treble clef. So if you remember when we were talking about the tricks for treble clef and how you could do a saying, every good boy deserves fudge. Well, we can connect our saying to the bass clef. The only difference is we can't start with an E anymore like we did with treble clef. We actually have to start with a G for bass clef and see if you can notice some similarities in the order of notes once I start with G. See, we have G, B, just like we did with treble clef. Next one would be D, just like the next one is D in the treble clef. The fourth one is F, just like the top one in treble clef is F. But instead of reusing this E, which it's not an E, their very top note, it's a new letter that we haven't had yet for line notes. It's an A. So if you liked the trick of every good boy deserves fudge for treble clef up here, we're going to connect that down here for bass clef. So we'll start with good boys deserve fudge, and then always, because that's our new letter. If you liked every greasy burger deserves fries for treble clef, then we could do greasy burgers deserve fries always. If you liked every great big dragon flies for treble clef, we could do great big dragons fly always. I always try to encourage my students to connect their tricks, connect their sayings between treble clef and bass clef. And just remember that treble clef, it starts with an E, and bass clef, it starts with a G. And also for bass clef, you have to add that A at the end. As long as you connect them, then hopefully that'll be an easy way for you to remember both the notes for the treble clef and the bass clef for line notes. Now let's move over to our space notes. Spaces in treble clef are really nice because you can spell face in the space. Well, the bass clef, you don't spell a word that fits into our English language with all 4 letters. You do spell a word with 3 of the letters, and then there's a remaining letter at the end. So just like we have a similar pattern for treble and bass between our line notes, we have a similar pattern for treble and bass for our space notes as well. Again, we're not using that first letter. We're moving straight to the second letter. The second letter is an A, C, E, and that spells ace. But we have this leftover letter at the end, just like we did with the A over here in line notes. It's a G. So the way I remembered is I just pretended that this was an imaginary word, aseg or ace G, and that way I could spell it in my head like I did with face. If you'd like to go further, I'm going to write aseg down, or you could think ace and then G as ways to spell it. So one word, or kind of a saying with 2 words, we'll call it. Or if you want to use an entire phrase to help you remember the order of notes for your line note or for your space notes and bass clef like you would have done with your line notes, one nice saying is all cows eat grass. Another saying that works as well is all cars eat gas. So hopefully all of this was helpful, learning about the order of our notes, starting with 1 always at the bottom, moving up to 4 and 5 at the top, and then remembering that treble and bass clef, they are relatives, but they're not identical. So you have to think of them as separate, but still relating. And also finally, that your musical alphabet, it goes in a loop. It can go backwards and forwards, and it is infinitely repeating. So hopefully this helped you. Bye.